everybody, welcome to the Comic Gamer Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I'm here to review episodes 3 and 4 of Ahsoka. Now, last week I didn't review episode 3 because I'm starting to get the vibe that this show was sort of filmed more in like a movie. And this is what I mean. It's like, it feels like there's two parts. Like, because episode 1 and 2 kind of went together. If you had just watched episode 1, it would have been like, okay. But watch episodes 1 and 2, you're like, okay, I got an idea about this show. And that's what happened last week. I watched episode 3 last week, and I was like, it feels like I'm just watching one half of an episode. Then I watched the last episode 4, and I was like, okay, now I feel like I watched the second half. So I may just review them 2 episodes at a time. Like, that just might be what I do. Because I'll wait. I'll see how next week's episode goes. Because last week's episode felt like I watched half of an episode, and then this week felt like I watched the second half of the episode. So I just don't know how to fucking review this show right now, man. But anyways, I'm gonna review both these episodes as if they were one fucking thing, because it felt like one thing. Because episode 3 starts off with Ahsoka and Sabine on the hunt for, you know, the rogue, I guess, Sith. Though I don't know if they would be called Siths or Jedi. I mean, they got the red lightsaber, so I guess let's just say rogue Sith Jedi, Sith Lords, Dark Jedi, whatever. Let's say Dark Jedi. The rogue Dark Jedis who stole that artifact to potentially help them go to wherever Thrawn is, which we know they're gonna do, because if you watched any of the trailers, you know they find Thrawn. So you know that's gonna happen at a certain point. So you knew they were gonna succeed in this mission, but still you have to watch them try to stop this from going down. Now, that's only if you see the trailer. If you didn't see the trailer, you wouldn't have known. You might be like, well, I don't know. Are they gonna succeed? Are they not? But I digress. And the entire time they're trying to do that, Ahsoka and Sabine are trying to reconnect. Ahsoka is trying to teach Sabine the way. They're going through the training and going through all these things. Sabine's still having a hard time because she can't really connect to the Force. And they're obviously playing with the thing from Rogue One, where it was like everyone has access to the Force. It's just the ones who train and try hard, some people are born with a natural talent to be able to take advantage of the Force better than other people, but everyone potentially could learn to use the Force. And that was a concept that was sort of played up a lot more in Rogue One, in particular. No, not Rogue One. What was it? Last Jedi. It's played up in The Last Jedi a lot more. The concept that, you know, that anybody, like some random kid could use the Force with enough talent and practice, that anyone can do it. It's not something that's special to Skywalkers or a certain group of people. Anyone can use the Force. And so that's a concept that she was trying to implement to her. She was trying to just get across to her. And through the process of the 2 episodes, they are growing both closer together, but there's still this, like, crutch that ends up coming up. Meanwhile, Hera is trying to convince the council that there's some shit going on. And it's a weird thing going on. Like I say, Dave Filoni has done a very good job. He's tried to lay the seeds. He's doing the same thing that he did with the Clone Wars show. Which is, during the Clone Wars show, he wanted to make things make sense. Because if you just watch the prequel trilogy, you're like, how did things get to this point? You know, nothing really makes sense. There's no context to how all this stuff got to this far. But through the Clone Wars show, Dave Filoni was able to add so much context and so much, particularly to like the Anakin Skywalker character. If you just watch the trilogy, it feels like he just snapped one day. It feels like it was just like that was an overreaction. But you watch the trilogy and you watch the show, and you're like, oh, you can kind of see the seeds. You can see how his mind was working. You can see him slowly getting to that point. He didn't just get to that point. Stuff happened to Anakin to get him to that point. More than we actually know happened to get him to that point. And it seems like he's doing the same thing with this show for the sequel trilogy. Is he's trying to fill out, like, how did this New Republic fall so quickly and another empire-like thing rose up so fast. And the way he's been showing it is through pure incompetence. Through two things. Incompetence and laziness. Incompetent, laziness, complacency, just naivety, incompetence, complacency. All of these things ended up fucking the New Republic in the ass because there are people who are corrupt in certain positions. Like, literally, it's said multiple times throughout these 2 episodes that there are fucking people who were in the Empire in key positions all throughout the New Republic. Like, what? Like, huh? And they're like, they're all fine, and they're all recovered. You know, they're not. That's like, I get it. They're trying to, like, it's supposed to be equated to how we took all those Nazi scientists and brought them over here to work for us. But for the most part, a lot of those fucking scientists weren't fucking, like, hardcore. Like, they just cared about doing science shit. You know what I mean? They didn't actually give a fuck about where they were doing the science. Yeah, they did the science for their country, probably because they were held at gunpoint to do the science. They didn't really give a fuck. Whereas they have, like, key political and all these different kind of people in these spots. Not to mention, there are people who rode the fence, because they mentioned that multiple times, particularly in this. There are people, because there's a character who Hera talks to, who you could just tell that guy's fucking an Imperial, you know, he's still the Imperial guy. But they mention it, because they mentioned it in Mandalorian 2, that there are some characters that rode the fence. There are some, like, political big-time characters who really didn't give a fuck who was running things. And the fact is, nothing really changed for them, so they don't actually care. They're not actually dedicated to this cause. They can be convinced, and those guys are still in powers. So, like, it was just so much, like, the way he's laying it out, it is as clear as day how this fucking thing crashed. But while that's happening in the background, we're getting these cool fights between Sabine. Like, well, one, we got a cool rematch between Sabine, and I can't remember the character, I guess, what would it be? The apprentice of the lead Dark Jedi. But we get a rematch with them. We get this really cool battle with Ahsoka and him. Like, there's some really cool battles, some really cool character stuff, some really fun space battles. CGI in this show is off the charts, dude. Looks like a movie, man. Like, I mean, so Star Wars has kind of had that going for it. Like, Star Wars has had the better CGI between Marvel and Star Wars. Star Wars has killed it with that. But, man, it is pretty fucking good. I gotta tell you, the CGI looks amazing. We get a return of another character from The Mandalorian who helping out. We get another shout out to, ironically, to The Last Jedi with there's a certain sequence that's a straight up shout out to The Last Jedi. So many things happen in this, but in the end, what we end up living with is Sabine not being able to resist the temptation of finding and saving Ezra. At a certain point, it becomes abundantly obvious that they may not be able to stop this from happening. So the best thing they can do is stop any of them. Like, they may not be able to recover this thing in a way in which the bad guys can't get it back. So they're like, we might have to just destroy this thing to make sure they can't go get Thrawn. And of course, Sabine, despite what she says, couldn't do it. And she ends up going with the bad guys in hopes that she could find Ezra, because wherever Thrawn is, Ezra is. And which is stupid, because I'm just like, yo. Like, now granted, as a fan of the show, as a fan of Star Wars, as someone who's watching this shit, we know things aren't gonna go but so bad, because Thrawn isn't in the sequel trilogy. So it can't be Thrawn or Ezra, or none of them are in the sequel trilogy. So whatever happens here can't be but so bad. You know what I mean? So we know, at least we know Thrawn ain't gonna survive. That's the only thing we know. So we know things, generally speaking, works out. But in the context of the show, in the moment, it was like, oh my god, what are you doing? Also, it looks like fucking Ahsoka might have, like, died and went to the afterlife, because the show because the last episode ends with a big cliffhanger, dun dun dun, or talking to a de-aged version of Anakin Skywalker. And I am curious of how this conversation is gonna go. I'm curious of why she's here. She can't be dead. She can't be dead. I mean, like, it didn't look like it was that bad. I mean, the fall was deep, but it looked like something that, you know, a Jedi would usually survive. So I don't know. So it is fascinating and interesting to see what's gonna happen next. It ended on a very epic, like, kind of a nice cliffhanger. It was a really good cliffhanger. I'm not even lying. This week's episode was a really good cliffhanger. It was like, what the fuck's gonna happen next? I don't know. Like, I assume we're gonna get Thrawn in the next episode, or the next episode is gonna focus on Ahsoka's, you know, dream sequence she's having talking to Anakin. I'm not sure, but I am excited to see what happens next. And I'm pretty sure this season's gonna set up the big whole Dave Filoni big movie he's supposed to do. That's supposed to, like, cap cap off this Mandalorian verse kind of thing they got going here. Supposedly, that's what's supposed to happen. But I'm curious and I'm very excited to see what happens next. So I'd give both these episodes together combined, I'd give them like an 8, man. 8.5, 8.5. This show is really good. It's not like top tier. It's not top tier. It's like Mandalorian season 1 or 2 or even Andor. But it's somewhere in the middle. It's like between Mandalorian seasons 2 and Andor. It's like right below that. It's like right below that. I think it's the third best show. If that's any compliment.